How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, today we're going to talk about understaffed facilities. We're going to talk about the dangers of an understaffed facility, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about maybe some resolutions. I think this is going to be a good topic because, to be honest with you, as you're watching the news and you have all these concerns that are happening, especially those escapes. Now you got the escape coming out of Georgia. Everybody is obviously talking about operations, and it always comes down to understaffing. Now, granted, yes, understaffing is a national concern, but I always want to make sure that understaffing played a part in what happened, which I do believe the concern unfortunately, in Georgia, understaffing did play a major role in that. So me and Joe Pomponio today are going to talk about some of the dangers of understaffing so we can give people an idea of how that affects our facilities. But we don't want to end it there. We're also going to propose some solutions. Now, granted, this is not a catch-all. It's just more of let's get some information out there, let the public know this is how understaffing could affect our prisons and jails, because most of the time people just see a number and they really don't see how those numbers affect those facilities. What does it mean when a facility is down 18, 19%? How does that affect operations? And then for the people that are watching this that are desperate and looking for solutions, me and Joe have a few ideas that we could push your way. Maybe there's some that you've tried, maybe there's some that you haven't. But either way, we're going to put some really good information on this video, very balanced. Guys, real quick, let me go over my sponsors before we bring on Joe. First, we have American Military University. If you guys are looking for a degree, seek higher education, please check out American Military University. They are very supportive of what we do in corrections, very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. So if you guys get a chance, check it out. Again, even if you're looking just to kind of move up in the job, they have a lot of programs in there that can get you to where you want to be. So again, check out American Military University. We also have Inmate Manipulation Decoded. This book is on the market, doing very well, sells a lot of copies. It fills the gap. That's what this book was built for. It fills the gap. It teaches people of the dangers of manipulation and how to avoid it. That book is available on Amazon. The link to that is in the description. And then we have How to Succeed. I can't pick up this book. How to Succeed in Corrections, Lessons I've Learned while working in a prison. Just tons of advice, not just from myself, but from other people in this profession. Guys, when I tell you that this is a book, is a must-own for anybody wanting to work corrections, make it a career, you got to get this book. This book is available at blue360media.com. The link to that is in the description. And I have another book coming out shortly for our rookie staff that's going to complement this. And that's coming out soon. And again, from the same company, Blue360 Media. You know what's funny, guys? Even though I wrote this book, I still find myself utilizing it. Like I get stuck on something. I'm like, you know what? Let me read something. Let me just see if I'm correct with something. So it's pretty cool to kind of have that in your hand as just quick knowledge when and if needed. Let me get Joe on. Joe, what's up, brother?
Morning, my brother.
What's going on with you? How's everything?
Man, the weather's not hot down here anymore. It's actually open your windows and air it out kind of season. Man, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, we're going to start getting colder up here in Jersey. Right now, where I'm enjoying some of it, but in about a month or so, it starts to really drop.
Right.
Hey, Joe, this is a nice little routine we got going on Friday, Saturday, either Friday night or Saturday morning. We did do a bonus episode a couple of days ago on what to do if you get wind that there could be a possible escape attempt. Now we're going to touch on understaffing. I think these are trending topics. But Joe, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience, please?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Joe Pomponio. I'm a retired lieutenant from the Texas Department of Corrections of 30 years and currently working on a second career with our local sheriff's department in the jail division. And I'm a panel member for Tier Talk.
I got to admit, I love it when you say that. It makes me feel so good. Yeah, you know why? Because someone else reached out to me recently. They were from the academy, and they had someone that put down that they knew me as a reference. And when they called my number, they were shocked when I answered it. And, and I was like, oh, I said, I guess there's some value in this. He goes, yeah, we all watch your stuff. The video is used for, your videos are used here for training. So, I guess we, through over a decade of doing this, we've earned some level of credibility, whether it's through myself, the people I have on, or just the support you get from the people that have the courage to try what we teach or at least listen to the advice. So I think it's a great partnership effort. And and like my platform here, I'm very open to having different people coming on to discuss tips. And so we do get a real good multiple perspectives. Now, Joe, real quick, before we touch on, we're going to first express the dangers of an understaffed facility. Let the public know what does this really mean when they say a facility is understaffed. But I also, again, want to mention, I don't want understaffing to always be a catch-all. You know, if an officer's, not doing their job, if they're negligent, if they're sleeping on their post or stuff like that. I mean, yeah, maybe there's some concern with understaffing, but having said that, we can't be always utilizing that when there are failures that really do fall into individual accountability. I just want to make sure of that because, right now, every time we go to mention we have a major escape or something happens, and every time we're quick to say we're understaffed, a lot of people are looking at that as, here's that same bullshit excuse again. So I want to be very wary that when we say it, it actually is relevant because it's starting to lose its relevance. I'm going to be honest with you right now. It's starting to lose its relevance. I mean, could it be a concern? Yes. But because we've used it so many times, is it losing its value when it really is a concern? Yes. I kind of consider it like a, and guys, we keep it real here. We keep it real here. So I'm going to keep it real. When you have a concern that really relates to understaffing, then yes, the public should hear it and the public should respond accordingly. But when you're using it as if an inmate would for a false PREA, yeah, people may have to listen to it, but they know deep inside it's just becoming some type of either false cry or something to just get our mind off of what really needs to be done. And I didn't mean to be cold like that, but it's the truth. So let's just be wary of, if we have an understaffed facility, let's make sure when we state our arguments, the arguments truly do relate to how that understaffed facility operates and how that led to the to whatever the concern may be. Because right now, to be honest with you, the more people that look into these concerns, because a lot of concerns are getting national now, especially the escape in Georgia. When they hear the understaffing, the questions in those comments are, well, how did that play out? How did that play out? And they're asking about how did the numbers affect these areas? Because a lot of people now are just saying, yep, there they go again. There they go again. But before we talk about some of the dangers of an understaffed facility and then go into some of the solutions we believe could help, I wanted to ask Joe something. Joe, do you really think right now having a topic about understaffed prisons and jails is definitely a needed topic right now? And is this really, creating a national security crisis?
Absolutely. It's a beneficial topic because, jail administrators, wardens, leading rank and file of either DOC facilities or county jails or private prisons need to take heed. Understaffing leads to critical incidences like this. Not only are you running a facility short staffed, you're putting your offender population in danger, you're putting your employees in danger. And ultimately the understaffing is just one part of it, and you're right. Understaffing is always used as an scapegoat. It's the catch-all for why things happen, but that understaffing just plays a part. It's a minute part. There's other factors that play into understaffing, the culture of the unit, the morale of the unit, the way employees are treated, there's a multitude of things that lead to understaffing. Understaffing in itself is not just a straight to the point kind of blame.
Yeah, and guys, I just wanted to get that out there. I think it was great that Joe also shared the same message because, as it plays out in the news, I even find myself sometimes asking, like, was this facility, even if it is understaffed, did that really play a part in this? And that really came across with the Cavalcanti escape. When you did have the tower officer that was, not paying attention, supposedly, at least that's what's being said. And then you got repairs that weren't even completed. So that means that yard should never have been reopened. So again, let's just be wary of when that term is used and make sure it truly applies. And again, so we're talking about dangers of understaffed facilities. So let's talk about the first thing, Joe, and I'll have you go first. Out of respect, because you're my guest expert, and I'm going to compliment on some of your thoughts, if I may. And by the way, me and Joe both worked together to come up with this list. And again, it's not all inclusive, but it's enough to give an idea of basically what the concerns could be, and then also maybe some resolutions that I feel are rather simple to implement. Some of them, because I believe some of these resolutions that we'll talk about later on could be more in our control. Remember, that's another thing when it comes to maintaining and recruiting. We'll get to that is, what can we control and what we can't control, and then making sure that the staff who are looking for certain things understand the difference. And we'll get to that. Okay, so let's go to the first stage of an understaffed facility. Let's go with the obvious. Joe, closing down of essential post duties. So let's run some of the let's talk about some of the routine duties that do require to be done every day, obviously, or do require for an officer to be at those posts. And then basically what happens if we have to make a sacrifice in order to accommodate whatever we feel may need to be a priority.
Yeah, I mean, your daily building schedule is filled with essential duties that you have to do. You got to feed them. You got to do cell searches, for offenders and ADSEG and general population. You got to shower them, give them clean clothes. There's, your rovers or your pod bosses or whatever the case may be, have to do cell checks, security checks, search a certain number of cells each shift, each day. There's a multitude of essential duties that are supposed to happen every day. And when you start closing down positions or, your top priority, and secondary priority positions, you're basically just robbing Peter to pay Paul at that point. And, then the questions start to remain, are these duties still being carried out, even though we're collapsing these posts? Now you got one person responsible for two areas instead of one person responsible for each area, so, at some point they start to multiply and compound on each other. So, there's, like I said, there's a multitude of duties that we're responsible for carrying out every day, regardless of staffing.
Yeah. And guys, this does tend to be an impossible situation, because at this point, when you're under, choices are going to have to be made. You're going to try to operate it without getting outside assistance, but most of the time, when you start losing down, I would even go as far as a few essential posts, one or two essential posts. You got to start calling the higher ups to see if there could be an emergency response team. But remember, when facilities are understaffed, you also have to see where does the agency stand, because most likely if the facilities are understaffed, which could be the priority posts that are needed, then most likely those outside teams that will come to help are probably also either being utilized or understaffed themselves. So, it becomes a widespread cancer. So, you may not even have those resources. I remember going to Clark County Jail a while ago when the shift was so low that if they had a code, they had to call the sheriff's department to come in and help. It was just like I've never witnessed that before. Sadly, now that's going back years ago. As I've 2023 now, that seems to become the norm, that facilities have learned to operate, however, not effectively at these levels. And there are new people coming in that don't even understand what a full operating facility looks like. In their mind, an operation that's fully effective is going outside and getting help. I'm being honest, that has become the norm. And funny thing is you get used to that, and the higher ups, all of a sudden, maybe they're not getting the concerns anymore because, you stop writing it up. They think everything's okay. And to be honest with you, all we did was lower our standards of effective operations. And now it just gets lower and lower and lower through time. Think about that, guys. Once the moment you pull that first essential post and it becomes okay, then it's not going to be that big of a deal to pull two next time. And then all of a sudden, two becomes the norm. And then, there's only one extra. Let's just pull three for today, because it's like you forget, guys, the norm was never the two. the norm was always weren't supposed to pull any. But we've kind of dwindled all the way down to where we've accepted normal operations to be at this level of effectiveness. And as I said, when you get people that are coming in, and we'll get to people getting promoted a little bit quicker, remember, these people that are coming in and securing these positions right now, they don't know how a facility is supposed to be operated at the highest level of effectiveness, because some of them have never entered a facility when it was working at that highest level. So granted, when they start to move up or they start to secure higher positions, in their mind of effectiveness is nowhere near where that facility needs to be. So when they're making decisions on a understanding of the facility already operating at this low level, but in their mind thinking that's the highest level. And I hope I spelled that out correct, Joe. Does that make sense when it comes to
it absolutely makes sense. When you come in at that critical staffing, for you, that's the norm, because that's what you're taught. You never get the full view of what a fully functioning facility looks like. And when you start closing down post and you start canceling programmatic, non-programmatic activities like recreation, at some point your back's against the wall and you're fighting to get out on staffing. And, to add insult to injury and compound the headaches, you haven't run rec in 4 days, and what are the offenders going to do? They haven't had the chance to get out there on the rec yard and blow off some of that steam and get some of the stupid out of their system. So what happens? They start making it harder for the bosses who are already short. So it's a vicious cycle when you start that, because it never ends. Because once you start closing down posts, it becomes normal to you, and it shouldn't be.
Right. And then obviously, like for us, you'd make the message where if I'm down, I'm going to run it like it's an overnight schedule and lock everything down. And granted, you could do that for a little while, but you can't do that permanently, because obviously tension, you got to get them inmates out. You got stuff that's got to happen, but it does set a clear message. Hey, you know what we're going to do? We're running low. I'm going to lock it down, because that's the other thing. When you're running down a low facility and everybody's talking about the understaffing, as you see in the news, the escape. It's funny how I never see in the comments, at least from the public, well, shit, if it was that low, why weren't they locking it down? I think people even forgot that option exists, because they're so carried into, the rights. I get it, but you can't be effective if you don't have the staffing. So if I knew, if I came in and I said, hey, how many we got working tonight? 3 or 4, which could be the case in Georgia. Hey, lock it down.
Yeah.
Lock it down. But the sad thing is, because we're not really doing that, the people in those higher positions may not even think that, or even if they are thinking it, they may be worried about outside pressure. How could you lock it down? Well, guess what? What would you rather deal with? Outside pressure of locking it down and figuring out a way to open it up safely, or an escape that just happened? You gotta kind of never forget that when it comes to operations, I don't care what outside pressure is. Do not shift away from the core values of safety and security. I can always answer later on why I locked it down, but what I can never answer is, shit, in this case here, why did the inmates escape? And that's just a more generalized dialogue. And maybe I show another thing before we go to the next part. And it could bleed into the next part, actually. But Joe, I want to ask you one more question. This may be more for people that work on the inside. A lot of people tend to look at the numbers of the staffing. And what I mean by numbers is, this facility's got 800 officers and we're down 130. So, they look at the cost in overtime for that 130 officers. And of course, that cost of overtime is heavy. I mean, that's one of the things they look at. But then you get a smaller facility who's not down as many officers, because they don't really have a lot of officers, but their percentage is greater. So you may have this one facility that has 130 officers down, but they're down 11%. But it does cost a lot of, a lot more money because it's more staffing there. But then you got this other place, not that heavy with staffing, but they're down 17%. And a lot of the focus will wind up going to where the overtime is, because we're looking to save the money. And then they wind up forgetting that, oh, well, that's a small facility. Yeah, but they're down 17%. They're down 18%. They're down 19%. I think people should start looking at the percentages and not just the numbers. Would you agree to that? Because at any point, those percentages are really, when someone says they're down that amount of percentage, that means that they're down 17% in regards to operating essential post, down 18% in regards to operating essential post, whatever that number would be. So granted, when you see that, you got to say, well, hey, hold on. That's 10% of essential post here. And that's 19% of essential post here. We need to go to that smaller facility and see how that 18, 19, whatever percent is being played out. Kind of remove ourselves from the paper and really get there and see what's truly being effective. Have you worked at smaller facilities and bigger facilities? And that percentage, regardless of a small facility or a bigger facility, it matters. It hits both them. It matters. Correct? Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're on a smaller facility, for an example, I worked a 500 bed facility as a lieutenant, and we only had 101 correctional officers assigned. So for every correctional officer vacancy that we had, now keep in mind that also includes your sergeants, lieutenants, captain, and a major. So for every vacancy that we had, each person was considered 1%. Each body was 1 whole percent. So when you're down 20 officers, you're down 20% at that facility that's only, authorized to have 100 officers. Now, when you're at a facility like a 2250 where I worked and you have 300 officers assigned and you're down to 225, you're 75 officers short, yes, but your percentages are less. You really don't hit that major percentage because everybody represents, a quarter of a percent versus 1 whole percent. So the percentages, when you say you're down 20%, that's not really a true and accurate depiction of what your staffing level is. And
right.
It makes a difference not only on paper, but it makes a difference when it's being put out there regarding an incident or, like if I had an escape at a 500 bed unit and I had 96 officers with 5 vacancies, I'm only down 5% and I still have 96 officers. Whereas on the 2250, if I only have 150 officers, but I'm authorized 300, I'm down 50%. So, that's 150 officers versus 10 officers or 5 officers, so the percentages aren't always accurate.
And I'll be honest with you, I really do think that when it comes to that, people really need to just, I see how the numbers look on paper, but I really got to go to those facilities and see how that percentage is applied. Because if you don't see it in action, you're never going to understand the sacrifices that are being made.
Absolutely. And then, and for example, like the Georgia escape, the sheriff said that, in a perfect world, each one of his shifts, and I don't know how many shifts he had, I'm just going to assume 4 shifts, AM and PM for, each shift should have 30 officers. So you're talking about 120 officers, but, they say there was only 4 officers on duty. That's less than 10% staffing.
Yeah. Less
than 10%. So, the numbers versus percentages, they do matter.
Yeah. And I want to mention something too, guys. So when we get in desperation mode, so when you're, finding out that your staff is your shift is under and you're trying to make decisions, the decisions are at that moment are never going to be based on the long-term safety and security needs. They're going to be based on what's needed now. And then you wind up sacrificing the long term. So like, I got to get this. What about searches? I can't do searches today. And then I can't do searches tomorrow. I can't do searches the next day. So, in corrections is very complex. Problems don't just disappear. They build. They build up. So, you think, well, I could push this away for today and nothing happens. No, it's still got to be addressed. And if it doesn't, it just builds and builds. So when you're stuck in that impossible situation where you have to choose the now versus the long term, now is always going to win. But that doesn't mean the now creates the biggest security concern, because at one point, yes, I need the now, but we've neglected the long term for so long that the long term has become the now. If I'm making any sense, the now it's gotten to a point where the long term is the now. So it's like, hey guys, listen, for the last couple of weeks, I've been running under. I've been having to cover the post, but guys, I haven't done searches in 7 days. So now what would have been, maybe a day. Yeah, I still disagree, but maybe a day. Now 7 days. Let me tell you something. Searches that haven't been done for 7 days, that becomes a now.
Yeah.
That's 100% becomes a now. If I could just a little bit, but Joe, right? The long term versus the now, and then eventually the long term becomes the now.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the things you think about when we having this discussion.
Absolutely, the things you put off today, come up in your face tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's why it's good, guys, that we have these dialogues, because we can just run through tips and then you lose out on stuff like that through really, evolved discussion. Hey, Joe, let's talk about this, Joe. This was something that you put up immediately right away. Does relate to, the topic that we just did, but does, maybe you can add a little more to it. Delayed response to emergency or emergent situations.
Absolutely. If you don't have enough staff to respond, and you're on a big facility running only 5 or 6 officers, it's going to delay your response, because you're pulling people from other areas that got to secure their areas first before they can even respond to you. Having enough staffing to respond to an emergency is critical. If you're in there fighting with a convict, and I mean, you're in a full out brawl with a convict, and you're calling for help, and your people got to run from the other side of the facility because you're so short staffed, you got nobody nearby you. That I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the 60-second survival courses, where it's a training where you actually got to fight a red man suit for 60 seconds. And I'm telling you, folks, 60 seconds feels like an eternity. And, when you are so critically understaffed that your response has to come from the other side of the facility, man, that could be life or death for either you or the convict.
Yeah, and I want to add something to that too, because this could relate to the thing in Georgia as well. But again, just specifically, if in my head, in order for me to do my job, if I'm the officer on the floor and I know that my job is going to be filled with tons of conflicts, because I'm going to be trying to get people to follow the rules that don't want to follow the rules. If I feel there's not enough backup for me, I'm not going to be quite motivated to do my job. I'm being honest. There could have been a situation, they said, in Georgia, where they heard the loud noise, whatever it is, the officer didn't get up to do anything, and his concern would be, well, what could I do? Like, what could I really do besides putting myself and others in harm's way? And think about that. It's not being a coward. I mean, yeah, he has a job to do, but I got to understand his perspective. It could also be foolish. I mean, imagine if you're walking a facility right now, and let's say a little something superficial, but, well, not really, because, I was thinking of cigarettes, but let me shift that. Let's say I'm an officer and there's only 3 people working with me today in this one facility, let's say, and I see 2 inmates on the phone. You think I'm really going to run after that phone? I'm being honest with you. I mean, yeah, I know I have a job to do, but I also made a promise to my family I wouldn't put myself in dangerous positions, So the facility has failed to give me what I need to be effective.
We call that
I'm still going to document everything I've seen and everything, but I think there's also, me and Russ have talked about this, Joe, as well. Contraband is key, but you don't want to be so hungry for the contraband that you risk your safety and the safety of others. We'll always get it. Somehow we'll always get it. I mean, we know where they are. But with that said, when you have a facility that doesn't have enough people to respond to a code, I don't see that as being a facility that could be active in preventing criminal activity. Because if I'm don't think people have my back, I'm not going to be so willing to put myself at risk. And for the public, every interaction we have with an inmate, from enforcing the rules to just simple dialogue, does have on the back of it a tremendous risk. So having said that, think about even just normal interactions that you can have with an inmate. Simple instructions. Shit, if I call somebody and nobody comes, I'm not interacting with anyone. I'm just going to stay here and, pretty much look. Because, what am I supposed to do at this point? I can't be proactive. But Joe, what's your thoughts on that? Would you agree with the motivation?
Yeah, absolutely agree. We call that to live to see another day, or don't go to an area writing blank checks that your ass can't cash.
And that's and I like what you just said, but that's the agency that can't cash them at that point.
Absolutely, because you don't have enough staff to cash that in. And you definitely, you don't want to put yourself in a situation. I understand everybody wants to get that contraband. Hell, I did too. But you got to use some common sense. If you're walking into an area, you already know you're short staffed. Your nearest response is a quarter mile away from you. Obviously, you don't want to go in there and put yourself in a situation that you're going to be struggling for your life over what? A telephone. Over what? An extra T-shirt. Over what? You caught one with half a cigarette. Yeah, I mean, if he's a butthole today, he's going to be a butthole tomorrow. Save it for a day when you got the staff, and then you can catch the butthole. But, you definitely don't want to go down there and put yourself in a situation where you're writing a blank check that your ass can't cash. Not everybody has a good bluff game. And, sometimes it doesn't work out well.
And guys, even though we're talking about custody right now, this really does affect the staff, and does affect staffing at all levels across all departments. I mean, every area of facilities right now are understaffed because nobody is motivated to work in a prison or jail. So you'll see it when it comes to program providers. You'll see it when it comes to medical. I mean, so whatever we talk about here could probably also apply to those other departments in regards to what they could be seeing affecting them and maybe some possible resolutions. Joe, we talked about this many times before because we've done shows on understaffing before. This is just an attempt to revisit, but we got to talk about this, Joe. We're in desperate hours, right? So we need hiring. We need to get people into this profession, and we'll get to retention later. But for this thought, we're desperate. So all of a sudden, the focus doesn't become on quality; it shifts from quality to quantity, and then there's some speed tracking. Joe, what's going on here, Joe? When we're at that desperate hour looking for people to come into this profession,
we're in such a bad way that we're trying to recruit anybody and everybody that we possibly can to help fill these vacancies at these shorthanded units. We're trying to get them the help they need and they deserve. And unfortunately, at some point in time and at some level, we're sacrificing the training. We're sacrificing giving these cadets the knowledge that they deserve and need. And we're putting them into situations where understaffed facilities that are, cutting out essential functions just in order to survive a daily shift is, actually taught to them as a normal. Hiring quantity or quality, quantity over quality is never a good idea. If you find yourself in a spot where you're hiring quantity over quality, you need to take a look at the culture of your own unit. You need to dissect why you can't keep staff. You need to dissect why people keep leaving and honestly hear them out. I hate to say it. Some agencies, do exit interviews and, they just go into a box somewhere. They don't look at them. They don't honestly take them to heart. If you have problems within your file and rank and it's making your people leave because you have leaders and supervisors that have no tact, no leadership skills, and don't know how to deal with people, you need to deal with those, because that could be, a simple fix could help your retention levels greatly. And, sometimes you got to get rid of the bad apples for the greater good because you don't want the good bosses to suffer at the hands of the few.
Yeah. And Joe, when you mentioned speed tracking, the reason why that hit home with me is because once it gets in that desperate hour, we try to relook at the system and simplify it. And to get into correction should not be simple. You are looking for the best of the best because they will be challenged, mentally and physically. And when you start focusing on getting people in, you simplify the process. And a process that, like corrections, is really about there is some level of independence, but obviously there's a family atmosphere as well in which we need each other. But you also have people that are willing to step up as well. So it's a very fair balance of stepping up and solving problems, and then also doing things as a team in which we can trust each other to be dependent on each other. That means we're all putting in some level of equal value. When you go ahead and simplify the system to make it easier for people to get in because you're worried about the number, you lose on that independent accountability. The fact that, well, you know what, this person can't make it, but we need a body. Let's handhold them through the process. Yeah, I don't know if that's always the best idea because the problem is that this isn't even about the person's potential. You're looking to fill out a number. And then the sad thing is you're hand holding this person through the academy, through the challenges. You really don't know what they're about until they have to handle something on their own. And then what happens here is when they're put to the test at work, when it really matters, they fail.
Yep.
You know, and that's going to be a problem for not just the facility, the person working next to them, because this person hasn't been tested enough for us to gauge their potential. Because every time there's a conflict, we hold their hand. It's like, no, sometimes you got to let their hand go and, well, we got to pass this person through because we need the numbers. No, because that again, that's the now versus the long term. Yeah, you'll get a person there. That's fine. But I'm telling you, it's going to mount up because, again, you open up that door, the door just gets worse and worse. And now the nows have what you've done for the now has become the problem long term. You know, that's what you also have to, that's another perspective. Are we doing anything now that becomes more problematic in the long term? And I think the desperate hiring for quantity over quality is going to be a long-term problem. Because I will tell you one thing, and Joe, I think you agree with this. When you're hiring for quality, once in a while there'll be people that sneak through, unfortunately, and you know they're not who we thought they were, but they managed to make it through. They, were very good at playing the game a little bit, but we did lower the odds. I mean, nothing's perfect. People are going to make their way through, but we did lower the odds. And again, it would be some numbers that have gone corrupt and done foolish shit, but not as great. Now, when you switch it from quantity to quality, the odds of someone doing the job in a negative way increases, and the odds of getting someone of quality lessen. The whole thing is switched. So now it's like you have, like, I would be back in the day more shocked if I get someone, let's say that's corrupted. It's like, man, really? And they went through all this, and wow, whatever. Shame on us on that one. But nowadays, when you're looking at the news and someone makes a bad choice, it's like, well, yeah, but look at the hiring process, guys. They don't do the background checks anymore, or they become forgiven on certain crimes that they normally wouldn't be forgiving for. They don't use being a gang member or a former gang member against them anymore. So, to be honest with you, with the new hires, sometimes you get shocked of the person that is the utmost professional. I mean, look how the perspective has shifted. You want to hold the hand, but at the end, the long term is, that person's going to be challenged or something's going to happen. And we got the now, but someone's going to be there when all that shit piles up and all those bad choices were made. And the end result is going to be vulnerability at that correctional facility or at that agency. Joe, you gotta, this is something we discussed many times, but always worth revisiting. In respect to our staff who are doing the job, the staff that are professional that come in, regardless of the challenges that they face, they make the sacrifices, and obviously much appreciated on our end for what you do. Got to get the employee burnout. What does that mean? How are our employees being burnt out in corrections right now?
I mean, the ones that are continuing to come to work, we're working them in multiple areas. We're working them in multiple days. We're working them, multiple hours, 12, 16 hours. We're they're coming in and volunteering for overtime on their days off. We're just working them. But, the question is, are we really appreciating them? If you don't appreciate your workhorses, you're gonna run them. You're gonna basically run them to the glue factory. Employee burnout is so rampant right now because you have so many officers that want to hold together and hold the facility together for the greater good. But at some point, burnout does happen. When you work 16, 17 days straight, 12-hour days, 16-hour days, it plays a toll. It plays a toll on you physically. It plays a toll on you mentally. It plays a toll on your family life. Plays a toll on your marriage. Employee burnout is so rampant right now, and I know it's not just here. It's statewide. It's countrywide. The burnout factor right now is probably probably a good 50% more than it has been, in the last 20 years. And it's because that we're so critically understaffed that we've gotten so used to these people that are actually coming to work and being loyal, being dedicated, coming to work every day. We have just gotten into that train track of, we're here, we're going to do the job, and then we're going to go home, and tomorrow it's wake up and repeat. You got to take the time to make sure that your officers are good. You got to take the time to make sure your officers are okay, interact with them. If you see them starting to dwindle in their duties or dwindle in their enthusiasm, dwindle in their speed in which they're conducting things, take the time, regardless if it's going to make you even shorter, you've got to find a way to get them, a day off somewhere so they can kind of rest and recoup. The burnout, when you use them every day, it becomes so vicious. It's one of them things that's become the norm, and I hate to see that.
All right, sorry about that. I got your whole comment though. I promise you, I had my job called. So yeah, but I got your whole thing. I was able to mute my side. So yeah, Joe, and I agree with you 100% when it comes to that. I have done a lot of discussions on burnout before. I've done it with Joe, Ross, obviously William Young. He's got a good channel, Just Corrections. And, burnout is something that, it kills us because it kills the motivation to do the work. That's the problem. And then people, because they get so burnt out, they get so overwhelmed, they wind up losing the value behind the work they've done, the purpose they've done, because they just don't have the energy anymore. So it's hard to remain positive in a world that becomes so unpredictable in regards to how long you're going to have to be there. And, that's the biggest thing. Like, one thing about working in a negative environment, as prison can be sometimes, again, I do believe there's some intentionality in making the environment work for you. But with that said, it's still a very overwhelming negative environment that there should be some want to end that day and get home. We don't always have that. We don't have that ability where if we have a bad day, we can automatically say, okay, well, this will only be 8 hours and I'll be home. So sometimes we basically don't know if that time to come home is coming and if this 8-hour day is going to be a 16-hour day. So, I think there's a mental, what do you call it? I think there's a concern with how that affects us mentally, where not being able to have that escape or somewhere to get ourselves out of the moment briefly, to say, okay, we know it's going to be 8 hours. I'll deal with it and I'll go home and, spend time with the family. And again, it's tough because I don't think the agency or the managers or the supervisors want to be constantly, mandating people, because I know sometimes they're seen as the bad guys. But I don't think that's always the case. I think that their job is, yes, they got to keep a facility operational. That's their job, and it's not an easy job, because at the end of the day, I'm sure they should be trying to balance the needs of my people versus the needs of the agency. But at all times, the needs of the agency, there is some level of priority in which you have to translate that to the people that have to be mandated. And it doesn't. And the funny thing is, it doesn't lessen the value of the people being mandated. It increases the value of the work that they're doing. Like, to show you how important you are, I need you to stay. But if I'm so burnt out, I don't see the value of that. So I think that there's a good translation that has to be put into play, where if I have to mandate somebody, to be able to explain why it's there, why it's important, and then hopefully the family member, or I'm sorry, the person that's getting mandated can tell their family of, hey, this is why I'm being mandated, blah, blah, blah. And hopefully there's some level of understanding, because if I myself am getting hit and mandated, but I don't see the value behind it, I can't translate that to my family. And then my family becomes bitter. And now I just have to battle two things: the fact that I got to stay and probably don't want to be here, but then when I get home, I'm going to get yelled at. So and then I got to go back to work. I don't have a chance to breathe. Yeah. So again, for the loved ones at home, this person may not want to stay, but they have to stay. And, and then for you, letting them know of the value of the work being done. But I think that that's what matters. I mean, we talk about the value of our work and how we need to make more, which is true, granted, which is true, but it also comes with a cost. when it does happen. It comes with a cost that the work does have value. So like when someone says, hey, I'm sorry, I need you to stay, you are an essential employee. That alone should tell you that, hey, there's value behind this work and we need you. So again, this is a concern that it's just all kind of under that umbrella, and it puts a lot of people in impossible situations because, you can understand the perspective of someone not wanting to be here for another day, but then that frontline person should also be able to understand the perspective of that, good manager who doesn't want to do that, but has been trapped into the corner of, I have to, because I don't have a facility that's going to properly be running. And again, if it gets to that point where, I've seen some people getting hit 3-4 times. It's like, at this point also, let's just be honest here. They're no longer effective either. So at that point, instead of hitting this person 3 or 4 times in a row, I think it gets to that point where you got to talk about maybe locking down that facility a little bit, because again, you also want people that are effective. That's another thing. So I don't want people that, are willing to work in some case, but they're on their 3rd or 4th double in a row, back to back, 16, 16, 16, and 16. Or, people that, they may not want to work, but again, they're still doing, 16, 16, 16, and 16. I mean, hopefully when you're doing the mandates, you're looking at them and saying, hey, what, this guy did 3-4 doubles in a row. We're going to have to go figure out how to go around that person because.
And that's where a good leader comes into play, because you gotta make sure that you're rotating that out fairly. You gotta keep in mind, you got a lot of single parents that work for these agencies, single parents with children in daycare, and on the flip side of that, you have a bunch of officers that do it voluntarily because they want the money.
What's funny about what you
time you got to know when too much is enough. And you got
Joe, you made something very clear just now. So for some people that say, well, they're getting paid the overtime, the overtime's going to the child care.
Exactly.
So they're not making anything.
You got to be willing to work with your folks too, because I've had instances where single parents say, hey, Lou, I got to go get my kids from daycare, so they don't charge me an extra $25. But let me go get my kids from daycare, drop them off at my mom's house. I'll come back. I got you.
Yeah, and I agree with. I want to add something on this though. So I like what you just said. That situational. But I want to mention something, guys. When it comes to this employee burnout and the mandates, management may be in an impossible position because obviously they got to cover the facility. I have seen this firsthand. So I want to give you something. Sometimes when it comes to these mandates that have to happen because the facility's got to be covered, I believe sometimes the best way to handle that, where things are done fairly, and what I mean by that is I know we got the rotation, I get all that, but hear me out, because sometimes it's not about the rotation. It's like what Joe said, something that could be situational, because if you're lower staffed, the rotation moves pretty quick. So I could have been mandated yesterday, but we only have 6 people, so I'm going to be mandated again today. I think what helps us out a lot for management, and management should be in agreement with this, is if when it comes to that, there could be some working relationships with the front line, people on the floor that step up and help each other. I've seen that work out famously where, a couple officers come in and say, you know what, we'll cover for Joe. Joe's got to go pick up his kid. And the good thing about that is a couple of things. If Joe is playing a game, they're going to figure him out real soon and they'll police that. Or Joe gets a feeling of obligation because I helped Joe. I helped Joe personally. So now all of a sudden I'm getting hit and Joe comes up, hey, you want me to cover you, man? You covered for me. Let me cover for you. And I've seen it happen. It's not wishful thinking, because I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen where you get the mandates going, they get the list, and all of a sudden you see the people that are top to be mandated, they're waiting by the window to see what's happening. And then you see other officers come by saying, hey, you want to swap up? I'll do this for you, I'll do that for you. And all of a sudden, everything's just resolved. So I guess at this point, when you have that impossibility of, understaffing and being mandated, I would also like to expect besides management, voicing their concerns every day and being persistent with it. I do expect that. I also expect maybe some understanding of the impossibility of what management and that supervisor has to go through, and maybe some working out on the floor where if we really are a family, you know, even though I'm looking to go home, hear me out, even though I'm looking to go home, do I have to be there right now? Or, Joe's got his daughter's birthday. Maybe I could stay for Joe, because for me, I was just going to go home. I had nothing planned. Joe's got something with his daughter. Let me go help Joe. So I really feel that dynamic really comes into play now when it comes to that family environment. If we're really a family, I get it. We run the codes, all this other stuff. But will you stay 8 hours for me if I needed it? That's a good one. Hey, Joe, this is important to me. We got 2 more concerns when it comes to understaffed, and this dialogue is a good dialogue. And then we'll go into the resolutions. So we did burnout briefly. This one's quick. We're losing out on senior staff, which means that we're losing out on the core values of this profession. You got new boots coming in that kind of don't understand the dynamic of old school jailing, which is definitely still needed today. Sadly, that's not so easily translated. It's more of I got to watch it being done to truly understand it, because I have seen people try to explain old school dynamics and the newer boots take it very literal. And it's a very hard translation. It's something where it's like, you know what, watch what I do. And it's not just a one-time thing. It's watching this person maneuver over the course of time, and then you kind of picking up on those habits and then developing your own routine with a good, strong foundation. So now, again, when it comes to staffing, and this is part of the maintaining, you got to be very careful when, and we'll talk about the balanced approach, that the core values are not going with the people who are been here for a while that are now leaving, because those core values truly do matter in how we run a facility. Because I want to say something here. Not that we break the rules. It's not what I mean, but I want you to hear me out. Inmates, they don't have technically, we enforce the rules, but that's not to say that they're going to follow them. That's not what they're there for. They don't really follow the rules. They've learned how to circumvent them. Some, not all. Let's be fair. Some, not all. Good majority of them are going to do their time and leave. But granted, there are some that they're going to look to break the rules. Through time, when you have officers that only know the rules, they wind up getting, caught up in the chaos and, just making bad decisions sometimes, because, again, when you comes to working with the inmate population, sometimes you got to find a way not to break the rules, but bend and work around to kind of catch up. Not even to take the lead, because you're never ahead. You're never, guys, you work in corrections, realize this. You're never ahead. Don't try to outplay an inmate. These are professional cons. But sometimes you got to maneuver. And sometimes it's hard to translate what you just did. Sometimes like, oh, that was great. How'd you do that? Let me show you. Because it's hard for me to translate, because if I translate it, a lot of people are like, oh, you just violated procedure. Blah, blah. No. Watch what I do. So again, I think when it comes to the core values and you get those people that are leaving the senior staff, you're losing out on some very good experience that needs to be observed by the new boots, because right now, the momentum we have with our evolution right now really is based on people seeing this profession at the highest level of vulnerability, and then now moving up with that vulnerability, where for me, if you can maintain balance by having those senior staff that know how to maneuver around those vulnerabilities and stay true to the core values of what we're about, safety and security, that will balance the growth of the people coming in an effort to maintain the integrity of what we're about. So I think this to me is one of the most important things that we're losing right now, if we don't look to not just recruit, but what are we doing for the people that have remained in this profession and have helped us along these toughest of times. Would you agree? Would you agree with that, Joe? How important is that core value?
Yeah, it's very important. The retention of our senior staff is just as important as the retention of our new recruits. When you lose a solid brick wall for a chain link fence, chain link fence will hold things back for a little while, but unfortunately, people find a way to get through them or get over them. You have to have that balance of senior staff to new recruits, because you got the old hand values versus the new wave core values, and some of them interact, some of them intertwine, some don't. But it's almost pertinent to have that balance, because of the fact you got the senior staff with the voice of reason versus the new recruits of the voice of let's go get it. And the two really don't meet in the center very often, but you have to have that senior staff to be able to explain and show the ways that you can still complete the same task in a multitude of different ways. Just because it's in black and white in the policy, there's still a little common sense in there that you have to use. There's a multitude of ways of getting the same task done. There's more than one way to skin a cat. But if you leave that up to the new recruits, they're going to go straight down the center. They're going to go with what's in black and white. That's why it's critical that you find a way to retain some of your senior staff. And obviously you're going to lose some of your senior staff due to retirements, and whatnot. That cycle comes around every 10, 15 years where you lose a batch to retirements. But you have some senior staff that, this job is for them and this is all they want to do. So you got to identify those individuals and find a way to keep them, because those are the individuals that you're going to use to train your recruits as an FTO when they come in. They're the recruit's voice of reason. It's almost like you said, with the offender population, we're always going to be behind. Working in corrections is like a constant Tom and Jerry cartoon show. He keeps trying to get the mouse, and the mouse keeps getting away. So it's right. it's their job to outrun us, and it's our job to catch them.
Yeah, and guys, just as I said, some of these lessons, it is really watching the person through time, and then maybe gradually picking up on some of those good uphill habits. It really is stuff that really can't be always taught verbally. I agree. Sometimes you have to see how things are applied, because I may say something to Joe, and at first, because Joe doesn't have the context yet, he's new. He's coming in with a different mindset. His perspective of the facility is totally different than the perspective I've come from. So, the context has to be created, of course, but I think Joe may also need to see it being applied, because the courage really does come in the application of knowledge. That's how it becomes wisdom. So Joe needs to watch me apply my lessons. I mean, I'll tell Joe all day, and Joe's like, yeah, whatever. Because they some of the new boots may be so stuck in their ways that they may just, not really entertain what the senior officer has to say. And then the value really comes on that senior officer walking about and going by their word. And then all of a sudden there becomes this respect. And then all of a sudden Joe starts to pick up on those habits. And it's really the other half of, yeah, you talk the talk, but I need you to see the walk. I need you to see the walk, because I think a lot of the new boots today, they come in with, instead of curiosity, which I hope they do come in, they come in with sometimes judgment. So when you go to give them some level of advice, they're judging the advice, already, and probably not in a positive way, because they're looking to speak, as opposed to really listen. So and that's not all of them, but again, there's a good portion of them. So I think that not only do you tell them something, I think you got to get them to see it. I think they need to see it, because that's how you get them to buy into it, because again, I truly believe that right now application truly matters, especially if you're going to maintain those core values. You got to start showing people how it works, or why it works, to be more important, why it works. Because again, all these times with all these issues and people like, oh, these past practices, blah, blah, blah. Well, come into my world and let me show you why it works. Let me show you. Let me not tell you. Let me show you. And that's not even just for the people that the new boots. That's also for the people on the outside if they want to take a trip in. Now let's switch over. Now, again, we didn't do an all-inclusive list about problematic stuff, but I think we covered enough. That was the first hour. Now we're going to kind of go through what we feel are going to be some resolutions, just to put some in your mind. Hopefully, if you haven't thought of them, these are some good ones, or if you're thinking of it, maybe adding this could show some support for wherever, that direction you're trying to go. Because sometimes it really just, I know what I want to do, Gange, but will it be received? Well, maybe what we're telling you here could provide you that little oomph of courage to say, I'm going to try it anyway. Who cares if I fail? Let's go ahead and do it. Oh, wait, by the way, there was one more concern. Sorry. We'll make this real quick because we kind of touched on it. Joe, if you just want to close this one off, there was one more concern. Guys, when it comes to understaffed, rapid promotion to fill leadership positions. So we kind of talked about what, you're coming in, you're seeing the facility as it is, that becomes the norm. And you may not really understand what a fully effective prison or jail really looks like. Your norm is a lower standard. That was one of the concerns. Also, people that, we used to say, it's in my book coming out with rookies, are you really ever ready to promote? I would say no, because you never know what's going to be in that above position until you're there, but you could prepare yourself mentally for that. Sometimes people that don't have a lot of time in have not been able to prepare themselves mentally for that responsibility of being in that higher position. And then you're just putting them in there and they're just not ready to take on that role. And there are certain things about that role when it comes to the responsibility of others that really does take some level of time to get accustomed to. And I think that's one of the motivations that for me was needed to move up. And I don't think that is something that comes right away. I think that really takes a while because you have to understand what that responsibility entails. I mean, you may come in and say, yes, I'm willing to be responsible for every member of the team. Yeah, you may say that on day one, but wait till you really see what that responsibility entails. I get you may have the motivation to do it, but let's just show you what it really entails. And I think that takes time. I mean, you're going to be responsible for the choices of others. And in these corrections, wait till you see what some of those choices are that you're going to have to step up and not just take responsibility of, but, I could also defend. And it's going to be very hard for you to defend the position of your subordinate if you don't truly understand why that choice was made. Joe, what's your thoughts real quick about rapid promotions to fill leadership position? How does that affect how does it affect the front line as well?
It affects them greatly. I mean, it's back to the discussion of quantity or quality over quantity. Are we just throwing people in these sergeants, lieutenants, and captains positions just because we need somebody there because, it's been vacant for so long that nobody's had a day off? If that's why we're promoting people, we're looking at it from the wrong aspect. You don't want to rapid promote anybody that's not comfortable in their own abilities to do the job because they feel like they're not ready yet, because you don't want to throw them in a position where they're going to be overwhelmed right out the gate, because what's going to happen? They're going to wind up demoting and you're right back to square one. So, I don't agree with rapid promoting anybody. I've seen it too often just because a unit's so short. Hell, our agency here statewide is so short of lieutenants because, it's one of the hardest jobs in the career ladder to do, because you get shit from above you, get shit from below you. And, when you rapid promote somebody into that position, and I've seen them take them from outside sources. I've seen a police dispatcher get promoted to a lieutenant. Granted, she probably works well under pressure behind a radio console, but what does she know about running a correctional facility? What do they know about leading, 60 officers to do their jobs on a daily basis, make sure everybody goes home safe?
Joe, you hit up something real quick. That's always my biggest concern too, are people that jump from, let's say, frontline, right? And they jump over the supervisory position and go right to an administrative position. You cannot do that. You need a few years in a supervisory position, minimal, before you can even think about holding on to an administrative position, whether that's an administrative lieutenant, an administrative head of security, or even on the administrative side of the management of a prison outside of a department.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you got to have an understanding of what all the positions do, what they're responsible for, and how they play a role in the daily operations. And if you skip those and go straight to administrative positions, how much knowledge have you really gained?
Yeah, because what's funny is sometimes when they do promotions, they try to do promotions on technical skills, which technically is when I move up as a supervisor. Yeah, I'm going to have some knowledge of the technical skills. Don't get me wrong, because I got to oversee people to do the job, but I'm relying on them to be the technical person. because eventually as your areas get bigger, you're not going to have knowledge in all those areas. So the technical skill is great maybe at one point, but as you move further up, it's going to lessen because you're not going to be the technical expert in all areas that you supervise. So one of the things that the supervisory position is supposed to teach you right off the bat before you jump into the administrative side is how to manage people. That's the one thing that I don't think there's enough training on. And to be honest with you, for people that are moving up quickly, that managing people takes years to figure out.
It does. It takes years and it takes experience because we spend so much time, technically learning new supervisors. We don't train them on the people skills. We don't, we train them on all the HR policies of what you can and can't say. We train them on the EEO policies on what you can and can't say. We train them technically so they know how to take account. They know how to fill out a shift roster. And you're absolutely correct. We're not training them to train their people. We're not training them how to be an effective leader.
Well, how many times? Wait. So you go to supervisor, go give a charge to this employee, and no one's telling you how to deliver that charge.
Exactly.
I mean, am I saying there's a softer side of corrections when it comes to managing your people? Yes.
Yes.
I'm not going to pull back on that. They're not inmates. Even though we're embracing a little bit of a softer side towards that, you got to have the softer side when it comes to managing people and understand that at one point, your technical skills is great, but the further you move up, that's all going to lessen. And now the greater spot is how you manage people. So as a frontline supervisor, yeah, maybe there's some weight on the technical skill, but you got to start improving your management of people. But then when you get up to the administrative side, it's not about technicality because you got your experts there. I got the people that supervise that there. Look at that. There are already 2 layers. No, your job is to manage the people that manage the people, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The definition of a true leader is a direct reflection of those underneath them.
100%. Damn, Joe, what book did you just read?
30 years of hard knocks and trial and error.
Oh, is that the book you're working on right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to the second half of the dialogue. All right, so the second half of the dialogue is more about what do we do to maintain and recruit. So, Joe had mentioned, what is it? Maintain and recruit and retention. So basically what do we mean is what can we do to bring in new people, as well as what can we do to balance the old that's already there. I kind of think of the cable provider scenario we popped on a while ago where, cable companies do whatever they could for newer business, but then they forget that the older people who have been loyal would love some of those discounts too. They wind up leaving other cable companies because they don't feel that it's balanced. It's like, how's my bill $300 and a person coming in for their first years is $99? And what winds up happening is, and this is true, and I think it plays out to corrections as well, the older customers that are remaining with the company feel that they're the ones that are dealing with the burden of bringing the new people in. It's like, I got to pay more because you're trying to balance out, what you're going to give the new people. And I think that's where it plays out here in corrections. If we're going to do something, we got to make sure it's balanced because you don't want the new boots to feel that you don't want the old boots to feel that they're not getting nothing and all of the resources that they could get a piece of are now going to all the new boots. So how are you giving the new boots this amazing starting salary and we're making less, than we've ever made before, So it's always got to be balanced. So let's first start with this. I got to get this out there and I have an article coming out for AJA in January that's going to reflect this. Workplace culture, top down, bottom up. Okay, so when it comes to retention and maintaining, I don't really think you could do any initiatives until there's trust because everybody's always going to question the intent. And sometimes if you do it at the wrong time, the problem is it can become more divisive. So you have to build some level of trust. I mean, I'm working on that now with my agency and we're allowing the voices to be heard. We're bringing leadership down so they could talk to their people directly. And again, it's not in an effort to circumvent authority. It's more of an effort to have an open door policy, which there is a difference. Open door policy does not circumvent authority, but it lets people know of the concerns that are being had, but it also shows value to the frontline workers. And you got to build the trust. Now, remember, a lot of these facilities, they may have higher positions that have negative reputations. So you got to build who you are first and let people know who you are is what's going to define the position. You're not going to be defined by the negative reputations of that position. So you have to get out there, introduce yourself to your people, let them know who you are, and let them know how you guys can grow together. So again, it's a top-down initiative at first because it is a culture. It's not a wellness. Wellness is like a bottom-up initiative. Culture is top-down. Morale is top-down. So if you have bad leadership or leadership that really puts a restraint on what you're trying to do, you got to talk to them. You got to motivate them. Or if they're not willing, I'm sorry, guys, they could put a whole lid on everything you're going to try to do in an effort to create positive morale, and corrections needs that. And by the way, that's outside of compensation, your pay, and we'll get to that. But I want people to realize something. I know you're worth more money. I know it. I know you're worth whatever your weight is. I know you're worth it. But with that said, these are things we cannot control at this point. And if I feel that I'm not going to lead this profession, and I know that, then I can't focus on what's going to make me feel trapped and hopeless. I'm going to have to, maybe provide some hope that things will change later on, but I got to shift my focus to the little wins that I could get. Because you can spend your whole time on things you cannot control and be miserable, or once in a while, you can look to the left, see that there maybe is a small win there, seize the moment, create the win, and use that energy to move forward. Is it, wishful thinking? No, because you have to do that. I just said, if you know you're going to stay in this profession, you can't stay focused on things you cannot control. You can't. You got to say, hey, you know what? I get it. We're not making money. I get it, but I can't leave this profession because I'm making just enough. That's kind of how it happens. I'm making just enough. So no matter where I go, I may not have this opportunity to make what I'm making now, even though I know I deserve more. So I'm not going to stay focused on that. I got to focus on something else to keep me moving. Now, granted, if you're not planning on staying on this profession, then get out. Do it. Get out. Do it. Become whatever you could be that works. But I just want you to know one thing. Money doesn't solve everything, because I've seen people making more money and wish they can come back. I get it. But having said that, these are the challenges that we're facing. And if you feel that, hey, my family does come first, which is 100%, that's how you should feel, and there's an opportunity to make more money elsewhere, then seize the moment. But not everybody's going to have those opportunities. So at the end of the day, an opportunity for you may have been easy, but may not be easy for, let's say, Joe or myself. So the last thing I want to do is, hey, I'm going here to make more money. You should be doing the same. Well, I don't have that opportunity. Well, it's a shame. And it's like, no, you got to try to say, Joe's trapped right now. I don't want Joe's mindset to be trapped. I'm going to tell Joe, hey, listen, I know you're not making as much money as you would like, and I can't promise that's going to change in the future. But you know what? You have a new recruit coming in that really needs some guidance, that wants to make this a career. And your impact to them is going to be worth a lot more than anybody ever can pay you, because that's life. And I would love to give you this new boot so you could find the value in that. Here you go, Joe. Here's Gangi. He's day one. You're on your way out. He's on his way in. And he loves this profession. His father worked in this profession. I wish I could pay you more, but maybe I can give you this new boot, and you could talk to him, and you could kind of remind yourself of the tremendous value that this profession has to offer, and share that value with this new boot who's going to look for you to guidance. I think for me, I would take that, and I have, because listen to me, in my position, if I worked for a county, I would make a lot more than what I make now, but I'm happy where I'm at. And I told myself this was going to be a career, and I had a lot of different offers, but I stayed regardless of the money. I dealt with what was coming my way. And at the end of the day, I'm going to make it out. That's the key. But Joe, what's your thoughts when it comes to, obviously putting pressure on the top to create a great culture, but also reminding the front line up that you got to be willing to receive it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Workplace culture plays a significant factor. Money isn't everything. Just like you said, you can go somewhere else and make more money, but if you're friggin' miserable, what have you accomplished? Nothing. Money's not always a motivating factor in a workplace culture. As a mid-level manager myself, I was always taught that if you take care of those that take care of you, you will have a dedicated staff that will come to work, make it fun, and you can have fun on a daily basis and still get all your mandatory, things that you're supposed to do on a daily basis done, and have fun while you're doing it. 30 years ago, hell, I wasn't making half of what I was, making now as a lieutenant. And it wasn't about the money. I went to work because, it was a family environment, because we cut up and have fun. We were always serious and got our business done. But at the end of the day, we were a family when we walked out that gate, and we always stuck together, and I was making half of what I was making as a lieutenant when I retired, so it's not always about money. And if you have toxic leadership above you, toxic leadership will hamper a facility in no time. I've watched it happen. I've watched it happen in as little as 6 months with a toxic warden and a toxic major that had no people skills, that had, no dedication to those underneath them, no loyalty to those underneath them. And, we watched the staff dwindle damn near by 30% within a 6-month time frame, because, if you're not treating your folks firm, fair, and consistently, you're not treating them adequately, you're not backing them up, you're not taking care of them when they're taking care of you, then, in the end run, you're going to be short. And it's just plain and simple. And, I've seen it on several sites where people are screaming about money. We need more money. We need more money. Okay, we gave you more money, but we still have toxic leadership in play. We have toxic supervisors in play. We gave you more money, and you're still not coming to work. So did we really fix anything by throwing money at the problem doesn't fix it. You got to get to the root of the problem. And if it's within your workplace culture, it's your responsibility as a leader, as a manager, as an executive, to take care of that. Because if your people aren't coming to work because you have toxic supervision, again, leadership is a direct reflection of those underneath you. If you allow it to happen, if you don't address it, you bless it.
Joe, you're so spot on, because I've always taught, and I have it in my book, How to Succeed, that we got to shift from an outcome driven, to an effort driven environment. That's top down and bottom up. I don't think we appreciate efforts. I think we're just more focused on outcomes. That goes both ways.
Absolutely.
Management doesn't have control of something, and then frontline believes they have the authority, and we don't show value to an effort. We show only value to an outcome that they may not be able to produce. And sometimes same way for bad managers who don't appreciate efforts and expect impossible outcomes, especially now during these understaffed facilities. And I'm sure the amount of work that's being doubled up that they hold people responsible for, and the person says, hey, I couldn't, I'm sorry, I've been doing all this, and this person really does make an effort, and you treat them as if you only care about the outcome without really understanding the effort going behind a lot of the work that's needed. And the top-down culture obviously matters, so you can shift people away from the things they cannot control. I've seen people that, again, they're running from something. They don't find happiness there because they're always running from something, and they're going to find the same problems everywhere they go. And money is just not enough to keep them there dealing with the challenges, and they wish they can go back. But then you find people who are in this profession because they're running towards something, and whether the money's there or not, and again, they deserve the money, but the money's just not there. There's no control of it. They still have a higher purpose, because granted, there is some level of recognition that comes with the pay that shows value in the work that you're doing. I get it. We deserve to get paid more, hopefully, because we believe that it shows value into what we're doing. But that's not the only thing that should show value to what you're doing. You need to know that the value exists regardless of what you're being paid. Yes, I want that pay. Don't get me wrong. I want more money. But because I'm not going anywhere, I want people to know that this job is still something I hold dear. I went to this job because my father did it, and I respected my father. I love what he did. I loved hearing his stories. And I was like, you know what? I want to do this too. And then you go in there and you do it, and you have a purpose. And when the challenges come, you know what? I'm not here about the money. I'm here because, I wanted to be like my father to some extent. I love how we talked about the job. I love how we loved it because, believe it or not, older generations still love what we do. They love the term being a guard, the jailer, and running that housing unit. There was a level of this respect and just, a courageous attempt to walk around the people that society feared the most. And a lot of people would go home and just felt this, a job well done. And it would translate to their family when we had value for the job. And then that generation would love to do that because they saw that their parents, their mother, their father walked the beat. And there was just this embracing of what the value of the job is. I still feel that exists today, but we're getting so caught up in, the external benefit, with, to be honest with you, that really doesn't have any control on how you personally value the profession. So my thing is this: if you can make money elsewhere and you don't want to be here, that's fine. Chase the other opportunities. Please do. I'm not saying that. But for people that aren't going to go anywhere and they know that this is their career and they're going to ride it out, shift your focus a little bit. Go to things that you can control to make the day better, even if that includes a simple interaction with a rookie. Do what you could to create that impact. Because at the end of the day, when you retire, it's not about position. It's not about money. It's about moments of impact. I mean, you're going to look back and see where you created your legacy, even if that means that when you go to retire and there's one or two people that all of a sudden, speak at your retirement and say, "Hey, Joe, I've been in this profession for 10 years. And what you have taught me has made me better in every avenue of not just the profession, but of life." And you're going to feel it. You're going to absorb it. And it's just going to know that when I walk through these 25 years of my life, I committed to something that had value to another life. Because at the end of the day, corrections is all about the service of others. There is no other way to define what we do. So just to not have value in this profession, you're going to, and not having value behind the work you do, you're going to minimize every chance to have a positive interaction with someone who is looking to talk to you for some advice. And again, I've seen it at the end of the career, people that come up and they share this moment of this impact that they have with, let's say, Joe, and Joe is in tears. And never once when Joe was retiring, during that retirement, is Joe talking about money. Joe's talking about, sharing experiences. And what is Joe going to miss? Joe isn't going to miss the salary. Joe is going to miss every day he woke up and had a cup of coffee with his people in the center control or whatever Joe's routine was. It's the interaction with people. So don't minimize the value behind the work and the importance of the interactions because you're so focused on not making a couple of dollars more. Because then when 25 years passes, you're going to look back and say, man, I could have done a little bit more. I could have shared a little bit more. And now it's gone. And the best time of your life, you may not see it now because you're not willing to look at it, but I have seen people that have left this profession. And then when you put them on the show, they said, you know what? I wish I would have realized it then, but I did have some good times. I was just so into my own head that I never took a second to enjoy it. That's part of what I'm dealing with now with morale building. It gets so frustrating when you have people so focused on the money that you can't push a positive thought just to alleviate their feelings of being trapped. And when you say, hey, who's in charge of your fulfillment when it comes to this work, and they're pointing to management, they're not in charge of that. Don't never, ever, ever, never leave fulfillment, your ability to be fulfilled by what you do in the hands of somebody else. That should come from you, regardless of what you're getting paid. Hey, Joe, got to ask you this. Sorry, that thing does get to me a little bit. That's part of the backbone for what I do. Joe, you mentioned the balance. We kind of touched on this before, but the balanced approach between inviting and maintaining people in this profession. I feel that sometimes there's a lot of efforts towards recruitment, and then while they're getting new numbers, people are leaving out the back door. What's your thoughts on how important this balance is?
Yeah, absolutely. We've gotten, because of the understaffing, we've gotten so headstrong on, and so focused on the recruitment to bring our numbers back up, that, we've lost focus and lost sight of the people that are still there. And the ones that were actually holding these facilities down. It's sad that, especially in our agency here, that, we've made it a top priority for recruitment, and we forgot how to retain our good ones. And we actually had programs and training classes over that, calling, keeping the good ones. If you don't find a way to retain the staff that you already have, recruitment's just going to be a repetitive, it's just going to be a revolving door.
Right. I agree with that. Let me get myself back in. I agree with that 100%. And as I said, when balance efforts is, if you're going to increase the salary for those within the first couple of years coming into the profession, maybe a lower first year salary, but the second year salary is an incredible jump. Try to do something on the back end. Do not rob from the back end to add to the front end. Don't. So don't give like someone that's in their first year a $25,000 reward for staying a year, and then you give the people that have been in this profession for 25 years a $5,000 reward. It doesn't balance out well. I get the fact that you want to put some pressure for the invite, but you got to balance it out. They got to see things as being equal. So I get you got to give them a little bit of a jump to maintain them, but you got to do something for us because we're still here. And the problem is you can't invite new people in this profession without balancing the need to keep the old people in here, the senior staff, to translate the training. It's like, oh, we got 100 new people in, and yeah, but you lost 105 old senior staff. So who's training them? Yeah. Who's teaching them the stuff that can't be taught in policy and procedure? They may have went to an extensive academy, and that's great foundation, but who's teaching them to walk the walk? Because you just let 70 or 80 of them go. So again, try to find that balance, because if I'm a senior staff member, I'm looking at that first year to second year, and I'm seeing that as, so you stay a year, you get a $25,000 reward, and then I'm here for 25 and I got 5,000. Come on, guys, think. And that's just one example, of course. Hey, let me ask you a question, Joe. This is something that's recent, but they've been really focusing on employee wellness initiatives, mental and physical, that showcase the agency truly cares. Now, this can't be superficial. I mean, this really has to be done by people who truly do care about people's wellness, even if this costs a couple extra bucks to get the right people in who do this for a living. But Joe, what's your thoughts on employee wellness programs? What are these? What is this? Is this like something that should be initiated at all facilities throughout the agency, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, most agencies have some sort of employee assistance program for mental, benefits and physical exercise programs, gym memberships, stuff like that. But that's just, to me, it's the superficial. That's the superficial aspect of it. For me, the mental and physical aspect of the employees is knowing your employees, knowing when they're not quite right, knowing when they're coming to work in pain, but they're coming to work for you. All too often, being so short staffed, the supervisors very rarely take the time to know their employees. And I feel that knowing your employees, knowing their family dynamics, knowing their physical capabilities and physical aspects, being able to take care of your employees one-on-one, even if it's just, letting them vent, mentally it makes them feel better because they were able to get it off their chest. Physically, you notice that, one may be limping on a foot, may have a bad foot, swollen ankle, whatever the case may be, if they're taking time out of their schedule and they're bringing themselves to work for you in pain because you're that kind of leader that everybody wants to work for, you need to find a way to take care of your employees on a one-on-one scenario, not necessarily, referring everybody to EAP or sometimes they don't want to talk to these folks. Sometimes they want to talk to you. And it's because you've built up that rapport. The agency needs to spend more time caring about their employees, knowing their employees.
Yeah, Joe, you're spot on. I mean, this is a stressful environment, and most of us agencies, we basically expect people to have the right mental mindset before they come in, but they don't do anything to maintain that mindset when they're in this negative environment. I think the wellness thing is yes, follow up as well, 100%, but also maintaining wellness. Maintaining initiatives, especially during these times where people feel burned out, and like you said, mental and physical. So I think there should be stuff together that, it takes care of the mental and physical, but also highlights appreciation, creates a better working atmosphere and partnership with culture. So you have morale and you have wellness that could work in partnership. I think morale is the umbrella, and then the wellness would fall underneath that umbrella. But it's definitely a partnership effort between those two components, and I do think that they should be. Two areas that work together. I don't think that a lot of agencies invest in that, because the problem is, even though it's felt, I think a lot of people look for what's measurable, because a lot of people want to know where money's going and they want data. This really isn't a data-driven thing. This is you getting off your ass and going into a facility and feeling it. Like someone could say, well, sometimes they may judge wellness or whatever it is, sadly, maybe even on suicides or however they measure those extremes. It's not about numbers. It's about literally going into a facility 1 year, seeing how it feels inside that facility. And then maybe a year later, after implementing these programs, going back in, and just feeling the difference in the environment. And I truly do believe that's the only way you can tell if this is truly being successful. This isn't numbers, because numbers could always be doctored too. This is literally going to that facility and feeling the benefit, or not so much the benefit. But give or take, guys, you got to be able to provide something to help maintain wellness. I mean, we put so much effort in people coming in before they've been affected by the environment. And then we put no effort while they're in the environment. And again, still a partnership effort, because remember, guys, wellness is not something that is passive. It's intentional on your end too, on the front line. That's why I said it's a culture, maybe top down with some investment from front line, 100%. But wellness is definitely an intentional effort, bottom up. So granted, we're putting these things in. Are you going to try? Well, I don't trust management. It's still a good thing, though. Like that's a stupid excuse. That's just being cynical and feeding into the negative bias that you have. Hey, if I'm telling you we're doing this and it can only make your day better, and you're saying, well, I'm not going to do it because I don't like Joe. All right, well, that's on you now. That's on you now, because at this point we're trying to make an effort. You're not willing to receive it, and yet you're still going to blame us. No, you got to think about that. I mean, it's the same people that sometimes they say we're not doing enough to invite new people to the profession. And actually, let me get to that, because that's one of the thoughts at the end. I forgot to put that in. All right, so let's get rid of got employee wellness. Let's go to we got 3 more left. This matters: appreciation, recognition, compensation, benefits, higher level acknowledgement of the value of the work. In my book, I had for How to Succeed in Corrections, I did note that there's a difference between appreciation and recognition. I mean, yes, both have value, but recognition is more external, maybe based on an event, where appreciation is really based on the person, and appreciating the person, maybe even for the routine work. I have a feeling that's not really done a lot, where people do routine work and it's usually pretty much ignored unless something goes wrong. So I think that's a big thing in maintaining morale, or maintaining even some level of employee wellness, is letting people know that, hey, what you do matters. What you do every day matters. And again, that also deals with the sacrifices of being mandated, and just showing some level of appreciation for the work that's being done. And guys, the other part of our discussion before about compensation is also a level of recognition. Because I'm going to say recognition because it's externally driven for the work that we do. So when someone says, hey, you guys are worth this amount of money, that does say something about the work that we do. Even though we shouldn't be dependent on it, I get why it matters. But granted, appreciation's from within. Joe's a good supervisor. He comes up to me, sees I'm doing my searches every day, and I'm 100%, effective in what I do. taps me on my shoulder and says, hey, I just want to let you know. And it's specific appreciation. Hey, those searches you've been doing, really stepping up. I want to truly tell you I appreciate that, blah, blah, blah. And now Joe, even though he's showing me appreciation, there's a value now that's building up in me about the work I just did. So that to me is internal. It's just coming out. It's coming out because Joe has reminded me of what I already knew, because that's why I'm being effective. You know, I'm committed and connected to the work regardless of what I'm being paid, because I know what this job entails. So Joe comes up and says, hey, thank you for what you're doing, blah, 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 and specific with that thanks, then it just reminds me of the value of what I have. So appreciation and recognition matters. I think this is more for the senior staff, definitely for the new staff coming in. But right now, this is definitely something that I feel could be done more in an effort to maintain senior staff and reminding them of the sacrifices that are even made amongst the routine work. Why are we waiting for someone to do something on the outside to recognize them when we're now have a bunch of people on the inside who are doing work every day that we should be appreciating? And I've seen people say, you know, that's great. I work every day, and this guy does something on the streets, and all of a sudden he gets recognized, and all my hard work is shit. No, have a recognition award for that person. I get it. You know, let the people know that this is what he did. But don't sacrifice an appreciation award for a recognition award. Do them both. I think an employee of the month, it should be appreciation driven. This is a commitment this person has, a connection to the work they have every day. Let's appreciate them. And the recognition awards could be done as needed per whatever event. What's your thoughts on appreciation, recognition, all that other stuff, Joe?
Well, appreciation and recognition go hand in hand. I mean, you should always appreciate those underneath you and recognize the job that they do every day in and day out for you. You know, I was I was one of those lieutenants that captains and majors hated, because I'd put it on the radio, you know, at the end of say we had a rough day, or, you know, we had a rough week and it's our Friday and we're getting off. I'd be the first one to get on that radio. Hey, Lieutenant Pomponio, to all units, it's been a busy week. It's been a tough week, but I appreciate everything that you guys have done. You guys rock. And it used to drive, you know, and we get responses back on the radio. Dream work makes the team work. And you know, it's just the little things that mean the most to these folks. You don't have to go head over heels. Like I said, it used to drive my captains and majors crazy, because they think it sounds cheesy, but I'm telling you, if you say it to your folks, you know, face to face, or, you know, holy shit, Lieutenant Pomponio just put that on the radio, you know, for everybody to hear. Well, hell yeah, I want everybody to know how much I appreciate the folks underneath me and for the job that they did for me this week. You're damn right I'm going to put it on the radio, you know, and you should appreciate and recognize your folks 24/7.
That's why lineups are important.
Yep.
Roll calls, shift briefings, whatever they call it.
Absolutely. Shift briefings. You know, you never want to go into a shift briefing and add it on a bad note. If you have something that happened the day prior that you need to address, go ahead and address it. Address it at the beginning and end it on a good note. End it on the good things. Yep. Hey, guys, you guys are kicking ass on finding the contraband. You guys are kicking ass on finding extra necessities. You guys are keeping the halls quiet during mass movements. Awesome friggin' job. You know, it's the little things. The little things mean the most.
And guys, when we talk about understaffing, we know that it affects all levels across all departments. Every area is hit. You know, it's not just your facility. You have to realize that understaffing is more than just an individualized area. It affects every area of the agency or the facility, whatever, all areas of operation. I think at this point, when it comes to maintaining recruitment too, you know, because for the recruitment side, obviously you want people to know what this profession could offer, especially with, you know, new boots coming in that are looking to grow and develop. But there are a lot of people that within our own department that don't know the different avenues, or really haven't had a chance to speak to someone who represents a different part of the agency's function. You know, so being able to highlight opportunities for growth and development is essential for both recruitment and retention. And I think that this is money that's well invested. So if you're going out there on job fairs for new boots at colleges, and you're putting all your resources and bringing every area that your agency has to offer out there to the colleges to recruit new people. You should be putting that same resource into each of the facilities or each area of that you oversee to let people know these are the areas you could stretch into. Because again, even though someone said, well, Gangi, let me ask you a question. The facility is understaffed. I said, okay, I get it. And he goes, so what you're going to do wind up is when you show people opportunities, they're going to wind up going to the opportunity and leaving the facility. I said, listen, it's not just your facility that's understaffed. The agency's understaffed. So granted, I think it would be a lot better to award a senior staff with one of these opportunities and then get the new boot to come in and earn that. So I get what you're saying, robbing from Peter to pay Paul, but you can't just look at it as the facility being understaffed. Every area is understaffed. So I think that when you promote these opportunities, it's good to give these opportunities to someone who's been in the profession a little bit longer, and then have the other person come in and earn it. And what do I mean by earn it? Besides being a professional, being effective, stay with us. I mean, that's the key. Once you've gotten past those original challenges, I want to see something long-term. So granted, if you want a chance for these opportunities, you got to be here for a couple of years to get that. So right now, these opportunities for our senior people first, but I'm still going to let the recruitment team, the recruitment side know that this is where you could be maybe in the course of 5 to 7 years. And I'm sorry, guys, new people, you got to be patient, guys. I know you're coming in wanting to be some of them want to be a supervisor within 1 or 2 years. This job isn't for that. But if you be patient and you learn every day and you're intentional with that and you grow and develop, your day will come. It will come. But Joe, what's your thoughts about promoting opportunities for growth?
Oh yeah, I mean, you got to have those opportunities for your people to succeed and get ahead, or try different departments, or there's a wealth of opportunities out there in the correctional field, not necessarily in security. IT, internal affairs, maintenance, education, whatever the case may be. You got to recognize your tenure and give them the opportunity to succeed in the way they want to, and you got to let the new recruits come in and earn their way. And I agree with you. Everybody now that's coming in is in such a rush to get into a supervisory position that there's no hindsight on as to why they want the position to begin with. But you got to have that opportunity for growth. You got to let your people grow. Sometimes they don't want to grow in the security field. Sometimes, you got ones that want to go straight up the ladder, and that's fine. Encourage it, feed it, but you got to also understand that your tenured staff deserve the chance. They're the ones that hung in with you through thick and thin, through all the shit, through all the short staffing, through all the bad days, blood, guts, and tears. You got to, if you don't have opportunities within an agency to let your people grow, it becomes stagnant. And when you become stagnant, there we are.
Yeah, guys, corrections, jails, prisons is a whole different areas to branch into, whether it's on, I mean, there's interest, the investigative division, specialized teams, critical incident negotiation teams, different committees, whether they're wellness committees, like we mentioned, morale committees, LGBTQ committees, however, if you want to be a voice for your department, and one of the committees that represent, something you hold dear, we have stuff for resilience, committees for resilience. I mean, there's just so many areas where you can find an impact, whether it's something you do part-time or full-time, and then there's, again, admin, stuff like that, so, it's just, it's a lot of opportunities within these departments that people may not realize. And even when you're in this profession, you may not realize. So I think that the agency should promote that more, but do it balanced, because it's sad when you have a rookie coming in because all the resources have been sent towards recruitment and they know more about what this profession has to offer than senior staff who are getting ready to leave. So let's balance that effort. And the last one, this is balance. Senior staff and FTO must motivate. We do not need disgruntled individuals being the first contact for new recruits. Guys, you can't expect a new recruit coming in to understand what it's like to be mad at this profession for 25 years. You just can't. The other thing is that, if the agency is making good attempts at recruiting people and then they get sent your way to train and you're pushing them out, and then you're blaming the agency for not doing enough. Nope. I gave them to you. It was a good employer. I gave her to you. And then you just told this person, hey, you don't want to do 25 years here. Get the hell out. Your job at that point is to motivate. And no one said lie. You can introduce them to the challenges ahead. I'm not saying that. But if all you're doing is telling them the negative without trying to balance the positive, it's just unfair. Because at the end of the day, yes, we have a lot of negative, but there's a lot of positive. And if you don't express that to the new recruits and you just overwhelm them with negative, they're like, well, fuck that. I'm not going to stay here. And you know why they're going to say I'm not going to stay here? It has nothing to do with the profession. They're going to say, I don't want to stay here because I don't want to be you.
Yeah.
You think this whole time when you're bad-mouthing the profession, when the person leaves, the person's leaving because they have this negative perspective of the profession. It's not the case. They just don't want to be you in 25 years. So when they leave, they're not running away from the profession. They're running away from you because they have a feeling that in 25 years, they're going to be you.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm sorry. I'm not going to start my life that way, knowing that the end result is going to be someone who's disenfranchised, disgruntled, and looks a mess. What's your thoughts on that, Joe? Because that's something that was never really discussed. Like, I'm not running away because I'm afraid of the challenge of the profession. I kind of have some insight on that now because of the stuff that's out there for social consumption. The social media, YouTube, a lot of these people are researching it. So they kind of have an understanding to some extent of what they're walking into. But then you walk to someone that's disgruntled. And I've seen people say, yeah, Gangi, I understood this profession had some challenges, but I saw what I could look like in 25 years. My training officer was a miserable piece of work, and I just don't want to be them. So I wind up working at Walmart.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah, I've seen FTOs that were one light switch away from being a hostage taker. You got to have the right mentality of people in the field training officer's position. You want somebody who's energetic, firm, fair, and consistent, and can sell it. All the while maintaining the balance of policies and procedures. If you got somebody in that position who's just grown, it doesn't matter what you fucking do. You're gonna get holed out on overtime. When you get off this, man, they're gonna hole you out, and no matter what you do, you're always wrong. And you don't need negative people in those positions. And you're right. A lot of them leave because they're thinking, Jesus Christ, I don't want to be this person in 20 years. I don't want to be the person that, is one emotional stroke away from being a CNN segment or something. So,
And Joe, I want people to know this. The initial impression carries so much weight. So if I introduce you to someone that's negative, that is going to be the context for everything later on. So you got to be wary of who you're putting in these training positions as well as management. I mean, is it a hookup post, or are you actually finding the right people to introduce people to this profession? Hey, Joe, you have anything you want to say in close? This was a good dialogue. I mean, hopefully people stay for the whole all of it, because there's two parts there that had some value. But Joe, understaffing, the concerns, and then keeping people. I mean, any closing thought?
Yeah, you're under, you're understaffing. You need to dive into why you're really understaffed. Don't blame the culture of your facility on understaffing, because the culture of your facility is your responsibility, and so is the understaffing. Dive into why, deal with the issues, and help line it out. Work on your retention. Retention means more than recruitment. If you're not retaining folks, you can recruit all day long, but you got to, open repetitive door. For the people in the profession, I want you to know, even being 3 years retired now, I still have mad respect for everybody that walks the runs every day, shorthanded, doing double jobs, doing 16s. I had mad respect for you guys then, and I still have mad respect for you guys now. stay the course, hold the line, think about the big picture, think about the safety in numbers. And, just remember one thing that, and this was something that I never really thought about it until I left, until I retired from the agency. When I came in, my initial thought is what impact am I going to leave on the agency? And, the day I retired, the only thought across my mind was, what impact did I leave on my people?
And Joe, that's kind of what I do now with we're trying to build change, but we're letting the front line build investment because they're going to be a part of it. Because again, you can't just go in and create change. You got to maintain it. A lot of people forget that. You go in, you implement something, but then there's no one there to monitor and maintain it. And then the facility wants to go back to what it normally does, which sometimes, sadly, is usually isolation, divided. So you got to be there to kind of stop the facility from going back to what that normal routine is. So you get all these people that come in. I want to introduce change. Okay, how are you going to maintain it though? And that's where you need the frontline investment and buy-in. It's what they call diffusion of innovation. You start with a small group and they spread their influence. Because again, if you try to hit the masses at first, you got too much resistance. So you need to kind of build your, your warriors and help them, battle that message through the resistance. And I hope that we got across here that understaffing, it exists, but is it relevant to the concern? Let's not just use it as a catch-all. And we talked about the dangers of an understaffed facility. We try to cover as much as we could. And then we talked about solutions. And I want people to know that when it comes to the solutions, it's two ways. It's bottom up, top down. It's a partnership effort to work with morale and workplace culture and wellness, because at the end, management puts it out there. You got to receive it. And not only receive it, you got to take ownership in it. Be invested in it, be involved in what they're trying to implement and treat it as if it's your own. That's the key. And stop the blame game. That's the other thing. It's always everybody else's fault. And, sometimes you got to look within and ask yourself, could I do more? And also, part of this is also generalized animosity. I don't want to try anything new because I hate Joe and Joe represents admin. And stop. It's like, every good attempt that people try to put in, you minimize it before someone can even mention what the thought is. It's like, hey, by the way, we're going to try. Nope. I didn't say what we're going to try. You're already saying no before I can even tell you what it is that we're trying to implement. And that goes both ways, top down, bottom up. But as always, guys, hope you found value in this. And please, if you haven't, subscribe, interact, engage, come and hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Great way to spend a Saturday morning with my boy Joe, just sharing some knowledge out there. And hey, Joe, I got to see the guns. Give me a flex, Joe. Give me a flex.
It's flab now. Hell, I'm retired.
But Joe, can I tell you something, Joe?
Look at that.
To me, what you just showed me, Joe, is reverse potential.
I need more spinach.
Joe, what you just showed me was reverse potential. I saw where it used to be.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Now it's all down here.
Look at mine. I got nothing either. All right, as always, guys, love you guys. Stay safe. This goes to show you guys, corrections, if me and Joe survive, it truly is about communication, not handling ourselves. Yeah. I see you guys later.